Story time. So we've all had that shitty boss that kind of has made us want to pull out our hair. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about mine. I used to work at this little cafe that was in this area that was filled with government buildings. It was great. Loved it there. It was very busy, but unfortunately, both my coworker, who was also my supervisor, and we were the only ones working out front. So when it came to lunchtime, it would get very busy, aka if either of us tried to take a break, we would have to madly eat our food. By the way, we got a 15-minute break. We would try to eat our food as quickly as we can, hope to God that nobody would come in. As you could guess, that didn't really happen very often. What would usually happen is you would sit down for 3 minutes, suddenly a huge group would come in, and you would have to cancel or stop your break for a bit, go help them out. And then if you had the chance where it got quiet, then you would go back on your break. But that would happen every single day. So it was getting to a point where we were having interrupted breaks every single day. And actually, so since we're in Canada, that's actually against the law. According to the law, you're supposed to have a 30 minutes uninterrupted break. If it's interrupted, that is if you're working over 5 hours. If it's interrupted, then you're owed compensation for that. We weren't getting compensation. We were getting a lot of stress and a little bit of, digestion issues because we were eating very quickly. So my coworker and I actually sat down with my boss. I feel like we did it in a pretty mature way, where we explained to him that this isn't okay. We're not getting proper breaks. We're very stressed and we need something to change. And we just outlined it like that. We did put a little bit of pressure on because we did say since they're interrupted, we are owed a little bit of compensation. But that was about it. Well, the next day, my boss pulled my supervisor aside, who was, again, my coworker as well, and he took her outside. And at first I was like, oh God, what are they doing? Is he gonna fire her? No, he pulled her aside, basically separated her from everything, and basically said what we did was very immature and very unprofessional. He said that he was very put on the spot and kind of backed against the wall there, really, playing the victim there, which, by the way, he would do a lot more stories on that later. He was just very disappointed in us, a bit, essentially. But he said that he's willing to cut us a deal where he would start to come in during lunch, good, but he was gonna take a cut of tips. He asked me this afterwards if that was okay. I was like, yeah, sure. I figured he was just taking some of the coin tips. We make about probably $7 or $8 from coin tips by the time I would leave at the end of my 6 or 7 hour shift, so I wasn't too bothered by it. Then we actually started to see how much of tips he was taking. I think the total tips would normally be around $120 per day, maybe a little bit more. On the really busy days, it'd be over 200. But regardless, he was counting for 4 hours of tips, even though he was working an hour out on the floor. That is ridiculous. He was taking $20 worth of tips normally. Now, to put into perspective how awful that was, normally when I was getting tips at the end of the day, I was getting about $60. Now I was barely able to hit 30. Not only to mention, I'm a minimum wage worker, or I was at the time. So the fact that he was taking advantage of us like that, and we can't even say anything against that, and he was wrongfully taking tips like that, is very douchey. I only lasted a few more months there before I decided to quit. There's a lot more reasons why I also decided to quit, which I'd be willing to go to in another storytime video. Let me know if you want more, you guys.